Welcome to the Unshakeable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Eric S., who's come to share on the topic of the spiritual malady for up to 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for the Q&A portion of the meeting. Eric, it's over to you. Thanks so much for your service.
Absolutely, Danny. Thank you so much. My name's Eric, and I am a recovered alcoholic. And I want to thank everybody for your service. I know Young wasn't able to make it this afternoon, but I want to thank him. Send out a thank you to him for the invite. It's an honor and it's a privilege to be able to come and speak with you guys here today. I spoke at a CA meeting, I guess about I don't know, it was probably about a week ago, and it was an interesting experience. And I just put this out there. I want to tell you that I spend almost all of my recovery in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so when I came over here and spoke, I want to be clear that, yes, I did mountains of drugs. I mean, it didn't matter what was ever in front of me, whatever was available. The only thing I needed to know, which way am I going? Am I going up or am I going down? That's all I need to know, but I'm doing it. There's no question about that. You got it. I want it. I'm putting it in my body. But this person, someone had told me that I shared improperly in Cocaine Anonymous. Now, I don't know I don't know how I shared that was improper, other than the fact I shared my experience, and I let people know what I did that didn't work, and I let you know what I did that did work. And what I did that didn't work was stuff that didn't come from the book. And what I did do was the stuff that came from the book, and that actually worked, right? So I want to share a little bit about that. And so I just put that out there blanketly. I don't mean to offend anybody. This is all just my experience as I've been through this process, as I've been through the book. And I'm not saying that anybody should do it the way that I did it or have the experience that I've had, or if your experience is different than mine, that yours is wrong and mine is right, or anything like that. I just want to be really, really clear. We're on our own individual personal journey. And the way that I do it, the way that I recovered was by following the precise directions that are in this book. When I followed these directions, my life changed. Everything changed. So I would not try to tell you to do it any differently. The only thing I would tell you is just I would recommend that if you want to recover, perhaps pay attention to what's in this book to go through this process. So with that being said, it's so funny. I came out of my mother's womb. I chose spirituality because there's a lot of talk out there. I've been hearing this gibberish about this idea that the spiritual malady isn't a real thing, that for alcoholics or drug addicts or anything like that, this is just the human condition, which is kind of odd. I mean, if it was just a human condition, I don't know why we spend so much time talking about it in our book. Which is kind of odd because we don't talk about other human conditions like the common cold in the book, which, I mean, maybe we should. I don't know. I definitely do not think so. And I definitely don't think that what they're describing in this book with regard to the spiritual malady is simply the human condition. I think it's a little bit more than just the human condition. Because if it were just a human condition, then the human condition should be able to fix itself. But I lack power and I'm beyond human aid and I can't fix myself. So I think that there's something else going on here. And that's what I want to talk about. Because when I came out of my mother's womb, I came out with, a resentment. I came out filled with fear. I came out feeling less than and inadequate. I felt like an alien. I didn't feel like I belonged. And this is the only thing that until I made it to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and gained access to a power greater than myself, the only thing that ever combated that made me feel better, that made me feel different, that made me feel worthy, that made me feel a part of, was a mind or a mood altering substance. Alcohol was the leader of the pack with that. I put alcohol in my body and there was a transformation that occurred instantaneous, that I went from feeling less than and inadequate. I went from a zero to a hero. It had that uncanny ability to do it. And I fell in love with alcohol I was in love. I was going to say I fell in love with alcohol from the very first time that I felt the effects. But the truth is that I was in a very romantic relationship with alcohol before I even felt the effects of alcohol. I totally romanticized it. I had a beer can collection. People in my neighborhood, they used to think that I was a really great kid because I was going out. Our house was I lived in a neighborhood that was in the woods. So there were these country roads leading to the neighborhood. And my neighbors thought that I was a good kid because I was going out picking up trash. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't picking up all the trash. I was just picking up the beer cans. I was leaving everything else behind. I was only interested in the beer cans, and I would bring them home. I would clean them off, and I would stack them up on these shelves down in my basement. And there were thousands of them down there, literally thousands of beer cans down there. And I would put them in order. I would group them together. And my father was a drinker. My older brother, he was both my older brothers were using drugs, and they were dealers, and they were doing their thing. And so, I mean, I was just surrounded by all of this stuff, and I just romanticized it. I would hear my brothers talk about their awesome stories from their parties and the trouble that they would get into and how they get out of the trouble. And I would hear my father, I'd watch him drink and hear about his night at the golf club and all of this stuff. And it always sounded great and all these things. And alcohol it just had me in its grip before I even felt the effects of alcohol. My dad introduced me to the drink for the very first time when I was 8 years old. And it was a Sunday afternoon. He gave me a sip off of his Manhattan, and he also introduced me to cigarettes. He gave me a drag off of his Winston. And so at 8 years old, I started smoking and drinking with my father. Now, that was not on a daily basis, but that's where it began. And it was on every single weekend that would happen. And I would always look forward to the weekends for that very reason. And what was interesting about that was that while I didn't feel the physical effects of alcohol, with the exception of that cool burn when it goes down your esophagus, I didn't feel that. But what I did was have some psychological effects around it in terms of the fact that I was simply sipping off of my father's drink and smoking a cigarette with my father at 8 years old. I felt like I was an adult. I felt like I was cooler than all the other kids around me. I mean, I really thought that I was a hotshot. It really did something for me. I can't explain. I can't actually, truly explain to you what it did. But if you know, you know. But I didn't feel the effects of alcohol at that point, other than that cool burn. It was when I was 10 years old, I felt the full-on effects of alcohol for the first time. And I was at my buddy Mike's house, and I'll make this story very brief because I want to get into recovery, and I want to talk about all the other stuff. I just want to qualify myself here so you understand that I belong. I was at my buddy Mike's house. His mother had gone away for the weekend, and she left us home alone. And before she was even exhausted and cleared the garage, I said to Mike, let's make some cocktails. And he was totally shocked. He didn't know what a cocktail was. And I told him, I said, just get the glasses and get some glasses, get the orange juice. I'll get the vodka. And we made some screwdrivers. And the first drink that we made was about 90% orange juice, 10% vodka. I took a sip. I'm looking for that burn. I don't feel the burn, so I know it's not enough vodka. So I pour some orange juice out, pour some more vodka in, take another sip. Not the burn I'm looking for. A little bit more orange juice goes out, more vodka. Eventually I get back to a 90-10 ratio, and it's 90% vodka, 10% orange juice. And that was the burn I was looking for. That was the sensation I was looking for. So I took 3 or 4 big gulps of that. I grabbed some of the beer out of the garage. It was the middle of August. That garage was about 120 degrees. August in the Northeast gets very, very hot here. So the garage was probably about 120 degrees. That beer was disgusting. It was warm Michelob. I started drinking that. I wanted to throw it up the moment that I got it in my mouth, but I forced it down. I got stuck in the elevator. It's going up and down. My body's saying, don't swallow it, but I'm forcing it down. And then I'm drinking more vodka. I finish the beer. I get another beer, more vodka. And in about 5 minutes, that alcohol hits my bloodstream and that transformation occurs. And I go from zero to being a hero. I go from feeling short, dumb, ugly, less than, stupid, like an alien, unworthy, to I feel like I belong. I feel confident. I can talk to Mike. I can look him in the eyes. There is a new feeling about me. And I literally said out loud, I need this every single day of my life, because the feeling that it was giving me was something I had never felt before. I never knew I could felt like this before. I never knew that this feeling ever existed. And that's what alcohol did for me. And I chased it every single day. And this is what happened. I continued to drink, and within about 10, 15 minutes, there was more than one Mike standing in front of me. I started having double vision, went to quadruple vision, and then it just kept going up from there. Everything's spinning all around me. I start feeling like I'm going to throw up. I feel sick to my stomach. It's a horrible feeling. I start praying. I say, God, please, if you take this feeling away from me, I swear to you, I will never drink again. And I am swearing off of alcohol. I'm promising. I'm making deals with God. Just make me stop feeling this way. And I am projectile vomiting all over the place. Eventually, I pass out. I don't know. I black out rather. And I don't know exactly what I did. But the understanding is that I continued to drink. I know I puked all over Mike's house in the living room, and particularly in his mother's living room on her brand new rug, the rug she told us to stay off of. Don't even look at it. She didn't want us in that room. And I passed out on that rug for a while. I came to, I don't recall coming to. I just know that I came to, and I was obviously still in a blackout. And then it was about a day and a half, 2 days later, I come to and I'm at my house with my parents, and I'm in serious big trouble. It's not a good time. It's really a big deal. And I'm in a whole lot of trouble. And I've had to go to work with my dad as part of my punishment with him, and that was horrendous. Even when you're not punished, just working with him is terrible. Now when you're in all this trouble and you got to work with him is terrible. And throughout the course of the day, he's trying to get me to eat something, and he brings out a chocolate donut with a carton of orange juice. I see that orange juice, and I start to retch again, because I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to drink orange juice ever again, right? I'm just really feeling it. And then eventually he comes out and he brings me a glass of water, and he brings me, I still have that chocolate donut, but I can get a little bit of that water in me, and I'm starting to pick that donut like a bird, just pick at it. And what happens is I rehydrate and I start to get a little bit, my blood sugar starts to go up because of the donut, and I start to feel a little bit better. And then after about a half hour, my mind starts to clear up a little bit. And I started thinking about everything that had happened. I thought, gosh, what a horrible event. That was really horrible. And I was just trying to figure out like what went wrong. And then it occurred to me that Michelob was warm. There's no telling how long that was sitting in the garage. That beer was really bad. Not just tasted bad, but it was bad. Like it was off. It had gone off. And I thought I probably got botulism from that. I'm lucky I survived the botulism. And then I realized, I was like, wait a second. And I had fruit juice. Maybe the fruit juice was bad, and I mixed the warm beer with the fruit juice. I've never heard of anybody doing that. That's disgusting. Then I knew right away that that's why I got sick. That's why everything went wrong. That was the problem. And had like one of those aha moments. And I was like, my God, I don't have to avoid alcohol. I just have to avoid mixing warm beer with fruit juice. If I avoid that, then I'm going to be okay. Right? So I realized that this was just one big paranoid overreaction. And in 48 hours, I'm back out there doing it all over again. This time there was no vodka, no orange juice involved, and there was no beer involved. And guess what? It was the exact same result. I drink to the point that I'm projectile vomiting all over the place. I pass out, I black out, then I pass out, and I get in trouble. And pretty much I would say 90% of the time when I drink, that's how I drink. I black out, I pass out, I vomit. I don't like to vomit. Everybody thought they called me the vomiter. They were like, dude, you love vomiting. I'm like, I don't like vomiting. They're like, but you always vomit, dude. And I'm like, I know, I don't mean to. And there was always that fine line, and I'm trying to, not cross that line. But the problem is that sucker keeps moving on me, right? And it's like, you just don't know how much alcohol it is that's going to get me the buzz or isn't going to get me the buzz, because there's nights I could drink tons of alcohol and I would barely feel anything. And then there were other nights I would drink just a little bit of alcohol and it would kick in right away. And I'm like, man, I'm getting knocked over here. I don't understand it. It was a moving target all the time. But here's the thing. That is absolutely 100% irrelevant, because this is what happens. The reason why I continue to drink is because I trigger this thing called a phenomenon of craving that Dr. Silkworth referred to it as an allergy. He believed it was an allergy, right? And he said that these allergic people cannot use alcohol safely in any form at all. And that was me. That was me. I was using it I was doing it as best I could. But once I put it in my body, I would trigger that phenomenon of craving. I couldn't stop drinking and I was off to the races. Now, here's the thing. I can talk freely about this in here because it's CA, is that there was plenty of other things that I was doing. My middle brother, Ryan, man, I'll tell you what, this dude he always had tons of freaking cocaine and weed and LSD and all of this stuff. And I mean, I'm the type of guy, I'm going to be honest with you. He was a good big brother. He was generous with his weed and with his cocaine. He always hooked me up. He never charged me or anything like this. But see, I'm a scumbag, because what I would do is I would go in and I would actually steal cocaine and weed from him first. I would have a stash. Then I would go ask him for some, and then he would hook me up. So I just doubled the lot, right? And that's just the type of guy I am. I'm just dishonest like that, right? So he would always hook me up. So I'm like I was probably close to 11 years old when I started for the first time snorting cocaine. I'm smoking weed on the regular. I took LSD. I remember the first time I took LSD, we're riding around in the car and these guys, everybody's taking a tab, bing, taking a tab, boom. I don't know what's happening. This piece of paper like this comes handed back to me and I put the whole thing in my mouth. And I'm just sitting there, I'm chewing on it and I'm just going at it. And then a couple minutes later, they're like, where are the rest of the tabs? And I was like, I don't know. I don't have them. And they're like, we just handed them to you. I said, you gave me one. They were like, no, dude, there's multiples attached. I was like, well, maybe you should have said something because I took them all. And they were like, you're going for a ride, brother. You are going for a ride. And I did. I went for this crazy ride and it was this insane trip and I was totally out of control. And we end up at this other party. And then before I know it, I got the straw up my nose. I'm snorting the cocaine. I'm drinking the alcohol, man. And I remember I was like, I was so high on this whole deal. I was feeling so, I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about. I don't even have to explain it. I go into the bathroom and I'm standing in front of the mirror and I'm pulling my cheek and I feel like I'm pulling it like 4 feet out from the side of my head and it feels like rubber and I don't feel it and I'm blown away by it and I'm watching the back wall behind me. It's kind of like melting down and it's changing colors. And then I'm like high-fiving things that are just keep popping out at me. And I'm blown away. I'm loving this whole deal. This is amazing. I was like, wow, this is phenomenal. Right. And I continue to do this over and over and over again. And I'm mangling my life to the point that I don't want to do this stuff anymore, but yet I'm continuing to do this stuff. And I'm getting into a lot of trouble, you know? And, you know, there's a part in the book that talks about, and this was what always freaked me out. I always had a problem with this because it says we tried every known method of trying to quit on our own, but we weren't able to. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I didn't try to quit. I never tried quitting. I didn't. What I tried to do was to drink and use drugs without consequences. And I knocked myself out day after day after day, trying to avoid the consequences because it was simply out of the question for me to not drink or to use drugs. It was just that is ridiculous. You're kidding. This is the one thing that I've got going for me that feels good in my life, that's doing anything for me. Yeah, I am not giving this up. I just couldn't do it, man. There was just no way. It was absurd. And then I end up in a heap of trouble. Laws involved, courts are involved. My father wants to turn me over to the state of New Jersey, all of this stuff. I didn't tell you that I had my first introduction to AA when I was 12 years old. I was brought to an AA meeting on the recommendation of a counselor, said take him to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what they did with me. And then I was back in AA at 13. And it was like once every year after that, I was coming into an AA meeting. It was recommended that I come here. And then eventually I get to a point I'm in so much trouble that I don't know what to do. And I don't want to give it up, but I want the heat off of my back. And I say, check it out. Listen, I'll go to AA. I'll give it up. I'll go to AA. And that kind of changed the tone and tenor of everything. And everybody's like, okay, all right. If he's willing to get some help, we can work with this. If he's willing to do that. And I come to AA and I don't want to be here, but I'm making some of the meetings and I'm going to doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing up to a certain point, but my heart's not in it. I don't think that I'm an alcoholic. I don't think that I'm a drug addict. But then this is what happens. I'm here after about like 60 to 90 days and something's happening where, you know, I'm kind of starting to identify with some of the stuff that I'm hearing. I'm kind of like, well, maybe I do have this deal. Maybe I do. Maybe I should be thinking about it. Maybe I should be looking at this. And then this is what happened. One Thursday morning, about 8 a.m. in the morning, I'm walking across a parking lot and I hear my name shouted on the other side of the parking lot. And my last name it was. And I immediately go from walking this direction to walking that direction. I have no idea who it was. No thought went into it. It was just an automatic turn. I didn't think about it. And then I started to run and I ran over. I jumped into that van and that door slid shut behind me before my butt hit the seat. And before my butt hit the seat, I had a beer in my hand and I was drinking and I couldn't understand how that happened. I remember sitting there thinking like, that's insane. Where did that come? I didn't even think about it. I didn't ask for a beer. It was just handed to me. I didn't think anything about it. And I just started drinking it. And then everything else that we do follows after that. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was just blown, like totally blown. How is that possible? I couldn't imagine how I could take a drink. It was just handed to me after everything that I've been going through with all the trouble, everything. I'm trying to avoid all of this stuff. I don't want any more trouble. And I'm sitting here drinking at 8 a.m. in the morning with these people. And here's what's crazy. You're going to hear suggestions about change, people, places, and things. I want you to know those people, I'd never hung out with those people before. I'd never done anything with those people before. And we were going places that I had never been to before. And I was drinking with them. There was nothing. And then you're going to hear this idea about keep your memory green and think the drink through or think the drug through and so on and so on. I got news for you. That works right up to the point that you can't do it. There was no thought that came to my mind about thinking anything through. It simply handed to me. I took it and I drank it. And then when the other stuff came out, when the dollar bill rolled up, was handed to me, I snorted it. I just went on. And the reason for that, at that point, I said, well, I might as well just rock and roll now. I'm already out. Might as well just keep going. Why get blow it now? Right. And eventually I make it back to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's this dude, and it's wild. I don't know how it factors into my story. It's interesting. It's kind of anecdotal. It's kind of funny. This dude was like 6'6". He had bleach blonde hair. He spiked it up and he wore just leather jacket, leather pants. He drove around an MG with Mercedes emblems on it. And he spoke with a British accent. And guys, he wasn't British. He wasn't British. He was faking it. Okay. And I'm telling you, I think he was trying to be like Billy Idol. And he came up to me after a meeting, after I said, listen, I'm coming back. And I don't know. I think I belong here, whatever. And he comes up to me and he smacks me on my chest, back of his hand. And he calls me mate. And he says, hey, mate, what you did ain't okay. But one day it will be. And then he walks away. Never saw him again in my life. I was like, what the heck does that even mean? That's some crazy philosophical garbage that he just threw at me. But it always stuck with me. And I understand what he means. I understand now what he means. See, what I did wasn't okay, but it turned out that it actually was okay, because today it's okay that it happened, because I got a good understanding of what it was that I was dealing with. See, I came back into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and at that point, when I came back, I realized that I was an alcoholic and I was a drug addict. I realized it. I recognized it. There was no more doubt in my mind, right? There's no more doubt in my mind. But now I'm hearing these suggestions in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous: just don't drink, just don't drug, go to meetings and everything will be fine. It'll get better than your wildest dreams. And I said, sweet, I'm ready to rock and roll with that, man. Let's do this. But here's the problem, is that after a period of time, you go through this sometimes you get a pink cloud and you feel really great. You're elated. You get a girlfriend. I got a girlfriend. I was like, yeah, it is awesome. Right. All of this stuff, and everything's kind of going well. But then after a time, it kind of starts to dull and the clouds roll in and you start to become irritable, restless, and discontented. And that's what started to happen to me. Before I know it, I'm feeling like I was feeling like when I came out of my mother's womb, before I met alcohol, before I felt that experience. And I'm feeling like a freak. I'm feeling uncomfortable sitting in the rooms of AA. I feel like I don't belong. I feel like every time you're looking at me, you're judging me. I don't want to make eye contact with you, because I can feel like you can see into my soul and see what a loser I am. I don't want you to see that. I think you can see how weak I am. I think you can see how afraid I am, right? That I'm scared of everything. And I don't want any of that stuff. And I arrive and I stay here. I stay in this place and I stay in AA for quite a long time. And I'm going to the meetings. I've joined groups. I'm setting up meetings. I'm making coffee. I'm just setting up literature. I mean, I'm doing all the stuff, man. I'm doing everything. You guys know what it is. I'm doing all of these things. But the miracle that they're telling me that it's going to get better than my wildest dreams, isn't happening, man. It's actually getting worse. It's getting darker. I'm starting to lose hope. And I'm really getting to a point that I'm at that point in the beginning of the book where it refers to it as a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. I'm sitting in these rooms and I can't figure my way out of this. And what I don't realize is that what's happening here is that this is not as the result of drugs and alcohol, guys. This is not the result of drugs and alcohol. This is me without drugs and alcohol. This is me stone cold sober. This is me swimming in the river and I don't even know that I'm in the water. I'm sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm walking around all over the place. I don't know that I'm surrounded with the solution, and it's not getting in. It's not getting into me, guys. It's missing me somehow, and I don't understand why that's happening, right? I don't even know what the solution is. So eventually I arrive at a point where I was homicidal. I was suicidal. There were a number of people that I wanted to take out. I just didn't like these people. They offended me, and they offended me so deeply that I'm the type of person that if you offend me that deeply, I think that you should die. And I wanted to kill these people, and I was very serious about killing these people. They didn't do that type of harm to me. But when you make fun of me, you ridicule me, you put me down, maybe gossip about me, something like that, that's enough that I think you should die. And that's the type, that's where I was. Like, this guy deserves to be dead for that. And it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. But, but that's what goes through my head. But I'm also suicidal. And I'm trying to figure out how I can kill these people, every single one of them, not get caught, and then kill myself. I want to do the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle. That would be the greatest grand slam ever. Kill all these people and take myself out, not get caught. Perfect. And then I'm contemplating how I'm going to kill myself. And I'm thinking about where I'm going to do it, because I really don't want my mother and father to find me. So I'm not going to do it at their house. I'm not going to do it anywhere else, right? Because I don't want to be found. I don't want anybody to stumble in to see this stuff. So there was a place that I used to go fishing at, and I thought, what I'll do is I'll get rocks and I'll tie them around me and I'll put weights on me and I'll wade out into the middle of this lake as far as I can go. And then I'll shoot myself in the head and I'll fall under the water and I'll let the fish and the turtles and all the, whatever, do what they're going to do with me. And who knows if I'll ever be discovered. It'll just be, it'll be a one big mystery. Maybe they won't even know that I killed myself. I don't care. I'm just out of the pain. But see, I can't do that. One day I'm driving down the road up here in New Jersey on 95. I'm about ready to drive my car off the overpass. And, I get this message from God. It was a voice. I heard it not in my ears, but in my head. And when it hits you, when God talks to you, you feel it sometimes. And I felt this. And he gave me an indication. He told me where to go that night, told me to go to a men's meeting. I didn't want to go to the meeting. And I went there and, I got introduced to this book here. It's called A New Pair of Glasses. This is the very book. At that book, I opened it up and there's a part in here where Chuck C's talking to his doctor and his doctor asks him, what's love? And Chuck says, love is an action. You do things for others for free and for fun, expecting nothing in return. And man, did that hit me? Cause I was like, gosh, I've never been loving. I'm a taker. Man, I realized I'm a taker. Everything has a price tag associated with it. Everything is transactional. I'll do for you, but you must do back for me. I never gave anything away. I never did anything nice for anybody. I was just a selfish taker, And my sponsor, one of my sponsors, he's passed away now, he used to tell me all the time, he'd say, Eric, if you don't cross the line from being a taker to being a giver, you ain't going to get this deal. You got to cross that line. And he used to say some other stuff. He used to say, if you're eating a crap sandwich, you probably ordered it. And I started to realize that crap sandwich that I was eating, I had ordered, right? But see, here's the problem is that I don't know how to order anything else yet. And I don't know how to get out of this situation I'm in yet. And eventually what happens in a short period of time, I get introduced to the book, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, by this guy that I thought was a freak. The guy had a shaved head. He had a rainbow colored rhino horn on top of his head. Today he would fit in anywhere. Back then he stuck out like a sore thumb. You thought he was a freak. And, he took me through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And at this period of time, there was this saying that was going on. And we sometimes we hear it pop up, but it's not as common anymore as it used to be. Every meeting I went to, you hear all the time, acceptance is the answer to all of your problems, and that absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. And there is some truth to that, but there's a huge misunderstanding around all of that, right? And I'm hearing this stuff and I'm trying to accept everything. I'm trying, man, and it's not working. I'm failing. I'm really in a lot of pain. My head is bonkers. It's man, I'm done in. It's exploding. And, I just don't know what to do. So this guy tells me to come over to his house, this guy with the rhino horn, and I go over, and when I get there, he takes my big book away from me and he opens up to 449, which is the third edition big book, 449. And I saw him open up to that page and I thought, my God, he's going to hit me with acceptance. This is horrible. Man, no, don't do this to me. But what he did was this. He took that page, he ripped it out of my big book and he crumbled it up and he threw it on the floor. And he said, Eric, acceptance is not the answer to all of your problems. He said, gaining access to a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem, is the answer to all of your problems. And see, I hadn't heard that before, but that sounded right. And that landed on me. That landed right. That felt comfortable. I knew that was right. I knew it. And then he asked me, could you accept that? And I said that I could. And he invited me into his house. And we sat down and we got to work. We got into this big book, right? And really what he did was he took me from chapter to chapter through the doctor's opinion, through Bill's story. I went through Bill's story with him. And my God, this is what we did. We crossed out Bill's name and we put my name up there. He says, we're going to go through this. And I promise you, when we go through this and we go through it the right way, you're going to identify so much with Bill. You're going to realize that this is your story, not just his. I was like, wow, okay, I'm down with that. And I started to go through it and I started to recognize Bill's hopelessness. And I recognized that was my hopelessness as well. I was going through the same thing. And Bill was talking about how dark it was and that this quicksand stretched out around him and that he was doomed and alcohol was his master. And Bill talked about suicide. At first, the guys are jumping from the Tower of High Finance and he's like, they're cowards. And then in only a few paragraphs, he's sitting there contemplating it himself. He's standing in front of the medicine cabinet, contemplating taking poison, right? He wants out. He says it himself. Should I kill myself? No, not now. Not now. He doesn't ever take it off the table. He doesn't take it off the table, guys. And I was like, holy cow, this is Bill. I was just like that. That's where I was. And my sponsor promised me, and I love that the Unshakeable Foundation, the name of your meeting. See, what we're talking about here is this foundation. I'm talking about my foundation. My foundation is this, is that I'm understanding what it is that I'm suffering from, right? And it's upon this foundation that I'm going to be able to put my cornerstone in place, that second step, right? And I need that solid foundation. So my sponsor, he takes me through the doctors of pain. He takes me through Bill's story. He takes me through more about alcohol. There's a solution and more about alcoholism. And we go through it and I'm like, holy cow, this is me over and over and over again. I couldn't get around it, but I'm starting to feel some hope here because I'd never felt like this before sitting in meetings because people weren't talking like this, guys. They weren't telling me this stuff. They just weren't doing it. And then we get to we agnostics. And then he shows me how we agnostics tracks with Bill's story. The progression of we agnostics is the same as the progression of Bill's story. And when Ebby comes to him and he says, hey man, I've got religion, Bill was aghast. Well, I was aghast. I don't want to hear about religion. How's Jesus going to help me? Blah, blah, blah. I had the same reaction. I don't want this stuff. So did Bill. Right? These were my prejudices. I had some honest doubts, man, some legitimate honest doubts, just like we agnostics talks about. Bill had some legitimate honest doubts. And he sits there with Ebby in that kitchen and they have this conversation and Bill's going through it. He's throwing everything at Ebby. He's bing, what about this? I remember the preacher. I'm okay with this, but I'm not okay with that. I'll agree the spheres have their music, but don't you dare tell me how to listen. I'll believe that there's a power greater than myself. He created the stars, the earth, the sun, the moon, but don't tell me how I'm supposed to worship it. He says, heck, I'll even believe in a czar of the heavens, but I'll tell you what. I don't care how loving his sway is. He does not get the right to tell me how to live. And that's where I was at. I don't want a God telling me how I'm supposed to be living. No, that's reserved for me, man. I know what I want. I know what I need. I'm going to look out for me. And what I discovered was that I worship the most evil God of them all, the God of reason. This thing right up here. I'm going to trust in my mind and I'll figure it out. How many of you guys, when you run into a problem, say, man, I got to figure this out. And you want to sit down, you want to think about it. You're going to think about your problem over and over really long, deeply. Don't bother me. I'm thinking about my problems. I'm coming up with a solution. Meanwhile, you're just swirling around the drain just like I was. I'm not being critical. I'm just saying that, listen, this is what we do, guys. That's the God of reason. It's evil. It's unfair. It's not kind. It really isn't. It means well, but it's going to fail us. It just fails us, right? So when I'm sitting there with my sponsor, he makes a very similar suggestion that Ebby made with Bill. He says, why don't we create your own conception? Now, what he didn't say was, why don't we create your own God? And what he didn't say was, why don't you choose my God? Because see, that's not in alignment with our big book. It doesn't ask us to create our own God. It says you can choose your own conception, how you're going to conceive of this God. We don't have to know this God. We don't have to be able to explain it or define it. Just what's going to be enough for me to conceive of it? And he reassured me that no matter how inadequate my conception was, that it was more than enough for me to make a beginning. He said it was going to be adequate. It would be fine. It will really be enough. So, we're going through this and, I came up with this conception and I didn't choose my own God because that's not what it said. And I didn't use his, like I said, because the big book tells us that we have to have our own personal experience with this. I have to have my own experience. I've got to have my personal experience with God. So that's why we create our own conception. I created my own conception. And he reassured me that it was more than enough for me to make a beginning. And then we went through a series of little exercises and we got up to the third step. And he asked me if I was willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Was I willing to make a decision? He asked me that question, is God everything or is he nothing? I don't believe that that's a rhetorical question. I really believe it's a question that I have to ask myself. And if you're questioning, if you're debating, I would just recommend to sit down, sit in some meditation with this and ask yourself, really, what is my decision be? What am I going to choose here? Because I can tell you, I sit from this point here and I look back in my life and that's all the God of reason. That's all my God, with God being nothing. Now that's what I got to look forward to. And it tells us that we've got two alternatives. One, go on to the bitter end, blotting out of our minds, our intolerable situation, or to live life based on spiritual principles. I was willing to live my life based on spiritual principles because the way he dealt with me, the way he brought me through this process, and what I got out of this book when I first started reading it, I started to get hope. I started to get cracked open. And my foundation was solid. I knew that I couldn't drink successfully. I knew that I didn't have power over alcohol. I demonstrated it that morning in that parking lot. Whether alcohol is in my body or not, I have a mind that's simply going to take me there. And guess what? That hungry, angry, lonely, tired, you might as well add another H to it. Put happy in there too. Happy. Watch out for happy. Look at our boy Fred. Everything was going perfect. Not a cloud on the horizon. He simply crosses the threshold of the dining room. Boom, out of the blue. Suddenly, seems like a good idea. You ought to have a cocktail with dinner. Off to the races again. Boom. He didn't have any problems. Everything was good. Business came off, making tons of money. Happy wife, happy family. Boom, gone. So this whole idea of all of this stuff that it's just on the bad days I got to watch for. I don't have power over it no matter what, period. No matter what. Doesn't matter what my mood is. Right? So I'm ready to do this, and I make this decision, and I get down on my hands and my knees with my sponsor, and I'll be honest, I did it with one eye open because I was really suspicious of him. I was like, this is weird. Don't trust this dude, right? And it was that really childish, immature garbage that young men have, like, don't touch me, dude. Don't try to pull some fast one on me when my eyes are closed. And that's just silliness and childish, but that's where I was at the time. And he did no such thing. And he encouraged me that the decision that I had just made was a really good decision. And he said that I might feel a very powerful effect. He said, but it won't be long lasting unless I continue to move forward to go through the rest of these process. And he showed me in a book where it said that next, inside the third step, it says next we launched off on a course of vigorous action, a personal house cleaning. And then he explained to me what I was going to do. He said, you're going to do a personal inventory. We're going to take a look deep inside of you. And we're going to try to find and discover and identify all the things that are blocking you off from this power greater than yourself. Because believe me, that power greater than yourself is not refusing you. You are refusing it. And I thought, I don't know about that. But as I started to go through the inventory, I started to realize that was the truth. Because as I'm going through this inventory and I'm starting to realize that I'm the manufacturer of my own misery, that I had been creating all of these things, all these scenarios, that I was stepping on the toes of my fellows and they were retaliating seemingly without provocation, I started to realize that God had nothing to do with any of that stuff, that this was all about me, that I was living in that third column. My self-esteem, my security, my ambitions, everything was all jacked up, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to assert myself. I'm going to get this stuff. I'm going to lie, cheat, and steal, whatever it is. And I'm getting mangled, guys. I'm getting mangled. Right? So we get in that fourth column into that turnaround and we look at all of those questions and I get set free. And what I realize is it tells us earlier in the book, it says we're driven by 100 different forms of fear. So when I go through those four questions, what I realize is that I'm driven by fear. And in the fifth step, it talks about the exact nature of our defects of character. Here we go. There we go. That's the exact nature of my defect of character. It's this fear. It's fear. That's what's driving it, because the book says I'm driven by fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. It's that fear that's been driving this car the entire time. And ultimately, what's my fear? Fear that I'm all on my own. There's nobody that loves me. There's no protection. There is no God. I am the only power in my life. And I know I can't pull this deal off. Right? That's a horrible place to be. My sponsor asked me, he says, don't you think that that's objectionable? Isn't that an objectionable way to be living? And I said, it is. And he said, let's take this to step 6 and 7. And when we get to step 6 and 7, guys, this is a totally different ballgame, man. This is not about 6 and 7. It's not about, I'm going to take my assets into God and I'm going to work on this defect and I'm going to work on that. It doesn't say that, man. This is the completion of the third step. This is where really now I know what I'm giving God, man. Now I know what I'm giving. I'm giving him this stuff that's so deep inside of me that I don't want to reveal. These things that have been driving me, these things that have me so mangled, right? And I don't want to hold on to these things anymore. I want them out of me. And I'm at this point that I don't care what's good about me anymore. You could take that too. I want relief, man. I just want whatever you have got planned for me, God. That's what I want. And I ask God to take these things, the good and the bad. And then it says after that, it says we ask God to give us strength as we go out from here to do his bidding. Guys, It is now from this point on that I'm going out to the rest of the people. I'm going out to make my amends. I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to carry this message of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to go out and try to help other alcoholics. I am now an agent, man. It talks about that. I'm a spearhead of God's ever advancing creation. He gives me agency. Kind of like when you're trying to sell your house and you have a real estate agent, you give them the right to act on your behalf to sell that house. God is giving me agency, man. He's saying, I'm giving you the right, the power to go out to act on my behalf to help other people. And here's the amazing thing is that when I get out of my own way and I'm out there trying to help other people, God is coming into me and working on me. So when we get to that part earlier in the book and there's a solution, it says that God has entered into our hearts in a way which is indeed miraculous, and he's accomplished those things that I couldn't do for myself. Holy cow, that's what's happening. I'm getting set free here, guys. I'm starting to feel this freedom, this liberation. I'm getting filled with love and I'm filled with excitement, and my problems are falling away from me, and the whole new world is coming into view, just like Bill described. He says these scales of pride and prejudice fell from his eyes. That's what's starting to happen. And I'm realizing that God had been with me all along and I was the one who was blocking him, and that he desperately wants to be with me and he wants to show off in my life if I will only let him. And guys, I want to encourage anybody here today, if you're struggling with this deal, man, just trust it. Lean into this process. Throw yourself into it, right? It's been the best thing I've ever done in my life. Time's up. Thank you so much for letting me share, guys. Appreciate you.
Isaac.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks, service team, making the meeting possible. Hi, I'm Isaac. I'm a recovered addict. Eric, thank you so much for your share. It was really good to hear you today. Just amazing. So my question is just in regards to the spiritual malady. So, now today you've had an experience through the steps, continue to have an experience through the steps, the obsession to drink and to use drugs has been removed. What does the spiritual malady look like in your life today, if and when it comes up, and how do you navigate that in those instances? Thanks.
Yeah. So this is the way that I understand it, the way that I read the book. So, and I didn't mention this before, but we have those bedevilments that are on page 52, right? And now I, for a long time, used to think that those were the spiritual malady, but I don't think that they are the spiritual malady. I think they're the manifestation of the spiritual malady. I think the spiritual malady is described just a little bit before in the beginning of We Agnostics, where it says lack of power. That was our dilemma. See, when self starts to show up, when I stop practicing step 10 and I stop practicing step 11, self shows up. And then I'm starting to suffer from a lack of power again, because I start thinking I'm the only power in my life. And what happens is those bedevilments start to pop back up again. I start to find myself in fear. Find myself starting to think about, how can I figure this out? I start to become selfish and self-centered again. And I start to be driven by these things. And that's why step 10 cautions us. Tells us not to rest on our laurels, be right? Because alcohol is a subtle foe. So we have to continue to watch for these things. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Isaac, for the question, and Eric, thanks so much for the answer. Next up, Michael, do you want to come in with your question?
Cheers, Danny. Michael, recovered addict, and cheers, service team, and thank you, Eric, for your share. And I felt your energy through the screen. You were on fire, man. Thank you very much. I feel like Isaac robbed my question as well. I was literally going to ask that about the spiritual malady, so I'm on the spot now. Moving on from that, if you like the spiritual malady or your agnosticism, have you found as you go through your journey, does it become more cunning, baffling, and powerful? A bit like, how it describes our illness of alcoholism. Do you ever find modern day agnosticism creeping in? And then if so, what do you do what's your process to get back into reliance on God rather than self? Thanks again.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you. That's a great question. So I have two responses to that, and I'll share both of them very quickly. I had a situation about 2 years ago. I was away with my wife, and we were up in the mountains, and we were having a great time. And I have not had this experience before, in a long, long time. I haven't had a desire or an obsession come on me. But we're out to dinner one night, and the owner of the restaurant, he offered to buy a round of drinks for my wife and I. And I said, I'm a cheap date. I'm a ginger ale or a water, right? I mean, no big deal. Now she drinks. She can drink. She's normal. And we had to wait. They told us it was going to be a 20-minute wait. It turned out to be an hour and 20-minute wait to get in there. So my wife said, I'm going to make them pay for it and get a nice whiskey. So I said, go for it, babe. And so she gets this whiskey and it comes back. And you guys remember the movie Pulp Fiction? Remember when they would open up that case and everything would glow, right? And you were just mesmerized. When that whiskey hit that table, it was glowing. And I was hypnotized by it. And I could smell it, and my mouth started to water, and my body, we talk about it's a different type of craving, but my body craved it. It wanted that alcohol in me so badly. And I remember I said to my wife, I said, hon, just move that just like about 1.5 feet over that way. And she goes, I'll get rid of it. I said, no, you don't have to get rid of it, because that ain't going to stop me. I can tell you, if I drink, moving it a foot, getting rid of it is not going to stop it. I'll go right to that bar. I'll go through that bar. And I just sat there in just quietly, and I closed my eyes in this restaurant, and I just went to God with this deal. And I literally was just like, God, you're going to have to fight this battle for me, because I do not have that power. My body is, I'm telling you, I could feel my arm reaching out. And it took about 2 minutes, but God fought that battle for me. And what I realized is this, is that when I made that decision in that third step to turn my will and my life over to care of God, God took that very, very seriously. And God stepped in and did for me what I could not do for myself in that moment. He kept me safe and protected. And he removed that obsession, and he restored me to sanity within just a couple of minutes, to the point that it was gone. I wasn't thinking about it anymore. I was totally back into a center. So there was another part of the question. Oh, so yes, I do have modern day agnosticism. It pops up all the time. Every single day it pops up. Absolutely. But what I have to do, and this is what I do, is that I literally start my day with that 11 step in prayer and meditation. I ask God to guide me throughout the day. And when these doubts start coming up, this is what I do. I literally turn to God and I say, God, I'm having doubts. I'm having doubts. And I know that a man that's doubting can't expect to receive. And God, I want to receive your love and your grace. So I'm asking you, God, please do something with these doubts. Please remove these doubts from me. Please demonstrate something for me. Bring me back home. Remind me that you're the one who's in charge here. Remind me that you're the boss, that you're the power, that you've got me, that I'm totally safe and protected in every single one of these situations. And then I remember there's that part in the book that says all men of faith have courage. Right? And I ask God for courage to continue to move forward, moving towards him, even with my doubts that he's going to drop me, even with those doubts. And guess what happens? I continue to go through that, and God invariably demonstrates. And typically what happens is he demonstrates in a way that I just forget about the fact that I was doubting. And I say, oh, that's right. I was doubting. Like, yesterday I had doubts. I don't know where that went, but it's gone. Right? And that's the amazing thing, is that God literally will do these things, and he's very subtle in the way that he moves. Thanks, man. I appreciate your question. I hope that answers it.
What a great question, Michael, and fantastic answer. Thank you, Eric. Next up, Andrew. Do you want to come in?
Good evening, everyone. Alcoholic Andrew. Recovered from a hopeless sense of just being alive, let alone all the bad other shit that I was tangled myself in. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, everyone. Excellent, Eric. Before I ask my question, in my book, The Capital God of Reason, capital R Reason, I put SCLF. I reasoned myself that far, and that's it. And mostly back to the bottle or mirror. My question is kind of nasty. I always like to ask this.
All right, I'm ready for it.
What was the smallest item that became the most profound spiritual experience for you? You mentioned the booze at the bar here with your wife.
Yeah.
I had huge problems with spiritual malady. And by the way, I totally identify this. I remember going, what the hell are you put me on this planet for? That was my thinking.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, and I've said it before, is that, I always wanted to have a superpower, right? And what I realized is this, it was a tricky little superpower, but it really is tremendous. And it was the realization and the experience of making myself vulnerable to God. Because see, when I was vulnerable, I thought I could be taken advantage of out here in the world. But see, when I make myself vulnerable to God, to his will, and I trust him, what I realize is that I gain power and strength somehow in some weird way. I am no longer vulnerable. I'm actually safe and protected. So when I am in those moments of fear, whatever it is that I allow myself to be vulnerable to God, to say, God, if the bottom falls out, if you pull the rug out from under me, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to lean into you that no matter what, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And then there was one other thing, was the trick of praying, right? And this is what it was when my wife, she was in another country with my child, and I was so jacked up, filled with resentment, filled with anger, filled with self-pity, all of this stuff. And, I remember I needed to be free of it. And I remember one night was that I asked God to inspire my prayers when I was praying, because I was so upset. And God, this is what he did. As I'm praying, I'm asking God to inspire it. I find myself praying for my wife. I find myself praying for the man that she was dating, if she was dating anybody. God, please let him be a good man. Please let him love her. Let him take care of her. And please let him be a good father to my son. Treat my son like his own. And what happened was I started to sincerely mean that. And this peace started to come over me. And I hadn't spoke to them in about 4.5 years. And no less than 12 hours later, that woman called me on the phone and said, it's been far too long. I'm moving back to the States. And we got back together. We're married today and we have another child. It's really the act of just trusting in God with all things, allowing myself to be vulnerable, giving God all of my fear, the whole deal. I hope that answers your question, Andrew.
Well, thank you so much. Great question, Andrew. Next up, Julian, would you like to come in?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yeah, thanks, Danny, for taking the meeting, and thanks for your share, Danny. Eric, I identified with a lot of that in your share. Being young and your feelings like when you were a kid. I'm really struggling. And it's everything's down to fear with me. But I like the bit where you said, choose your own God. Because that's what I'm struggling with. Can you just expand a little bit on what you mean by that, by choosing your own God? And, I've stopped praying, I really want to pray tonight, and what do I pray for? I struggle to ask, to put it into words, to ask, in a sentence, to ask, basically, what should I say tonight if I pray on my hands and knees to God? That's it, really.
Yeah. So I think, I hope what I said was that we don't choose our own God, is that what we do is we create our own conception, the way that we conceive of God, right? Because my problem is that if I choose my own God, I'm really going to choose a limited God, right? And what happened is the way that I went through this process, was arriving at a point where I could conceive of a God, was I had to look at my prejudices. And I really was a guy that bristled with antagonism with certain phrases, spiritual terms, and so on and so on. I really had strong resistance to these things. And I had honest doubts because I was like, well, what happened to my brother? What happened here? Why did this happen? If there's a God, how about this? And I've got all of these doubts, right? And the problem is that those are all the things that are blocking me off. And really what they did, they were blocking me off from really asking myself what these things truly mean to me, like what they mean to me, right? So with this idea of choosing my own conception, it's the way that I'm going to conceive of it. And it's something small. For me, it was simply, I believed that there was that thing that guided me to this book that started to crack me open. I believed that there was this thing that I could sense. I couldn't quite understand it. I couldn't describe it or define it, but there was this thing that guided me to AA. There was this thing that guided me to the big book. I couldn't deny the fact that I was powerless over alcohol. I was powerless over drugs, but yet I'm not drinking. How is that possible? I couldn't deny that. So it was like that small, tiny little starting point where I was willing to make that concession to say, all right, I know I'm powerless over this, but something's got to be going on for me not to be drinking today, for me not to be drugging today, for me of not having killed myself. Something's got to be there. And like Wilson talked about, he was willing to believe in like the created, stars of the universe and all of this other thing, right? If that's enough for you with just a little bit, just to conceive, to say there are stars, I didn't create them. Something created them. Something much bigger than me. I don't know what it could be, but I'm willing to rock with that. That's a fine starting point. That's a fine starting point. That's what we're talking about. It doesn't matter how big it is. It's just as long as you're willing to conceive. Do you now conceive or are you willing to? That's what it's talking about. So if you've got the willingness, my friend, you're well on your way. You're well on the way. Absolutely. I want to reassure you that you are well on your way if you have the willingness to believe.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Julian. Great question. And Eric, once again, thank you. Okay, last question of the night. Kamesha, do you want to come in?
Good afternoon, Nisha. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Danny, for the meeting, and thank you, Eric. That was an awesome share, awesome lead, and I could relate to so much of it. And I have two really quick questions. One, just what's your interpretation of the spheres really having their music? I've always kind of wondered what that was. And then just for your nightly review, do you write it out or do you kind of think about it?
Okay. So the first question, the spheres really do have their music. My interpretation of that is that I do believe that this is an energetic vibrational world. I do believe that there is, that I am like some sort of like, I send signals out, man. I send energy out. I send love out. I can't deny it. You know, have you ever been in a room and someone walks in a room and you can feel their energy and everybody goes, whoa, stay away from that dude. He is off. They're sending off an energy. Have you ever woke up in the morning and you're ready for a fight and suddenly, boom, you find yourself in a fight? I mean, they're out there, right? But it's one of those things that I feel like what he's talking about is, yes, Bill is admitting that the spheres do have their music. Yes, his grandfather admitted this, but man, don't tell me how I'm supposed to live and move throughout this world. Don't tell me how I'm supposed to do that. I'm going to live the way that I want with the belief. I'll believe there's something there, but I'm going to live the way that I want. I'm going to do it the way that I want. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then do I write out my 11 step at my nightly review? Not always. I'd be lying if I said that I always do. No, I don't always, but sometimes when I get pretty jammed up and I got to take a look at it, yeah. Sometimes I just do it in my head, but still it's one, maybe a resentment that's really dug in and I say, you know what? I need some extra power here. So I pull out the pad, I pull out the pen and paper and I start getting busy on that and start writing it out. And typically what happens when I do that is that I pray beforehand and I ask God to set aside everything I think I know about this resentment and to reveal whatever it is that I need to see. And I end up writing a lot more. And that's typically where God starts to reveal himself a lot more. And I say, oh my God, thank God I wrote this out. Do I have to make a phone call like right now? You bet. Yeah, I'm going to have to wake him up to get clear on this one, man. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.